Oregon Congressman Greg Walden was in the KBND studios over the weekend. I'm Dave Adams. He says one issue is paramount to get fixed in Oregon and the nation.
Jobs in the economy. If we had our economy going again and jobs being created, we would solve a lot of other problems that are facing the country. You'd be generating tax revenue. People would be able to stay in their homes. They'd be able to pay their bills. So it really gets back to jobs in the economy. That's why, it's good news. You got Kohl's that's going to open here soon. You got TRG that's going to hire another 200 people. Olive Garden hired a bunch of people. So there are some glimmers, and yet it's not enough.
So we're seeing some light, it appears, at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train, hopefully.
You hope so, but all the economists are saying this is going to be a really tough one to dig out of, and I worry about the impact of the debt that's being accumulated by the federal government right now and the consequences that portends going down the road for a sustained recovery when you're looking at $1 trillion a year just to pay the interest on the national debt. That's going to have a negative impact on interest rates. So when you go to buy a car, buy a home, whatever, down the road, you're going to pay more in interest rates and potentially hyperinflation. And so those are twin issues that linger out there in the future once the economy does get back. So this has to be managed very carefully. The best thing we could do right now, I think, is put a freeze on all these enormous federal regulations that are coming out. Anything over $100 million a year, and there are about 100 of them that affect our economy negatively. We ought to just stop. Give people a chance to kind of deal with what they're having to deal with now without a whole bunch of new rules and regulations. And then I think you spur the economy through the private sector. That's where the job creators are. It's us who are. I was in small business for nearly 22 years. 60% of the jobs that are created are coming out of small business. So you need to listen to what the small business people are saying works for them. And they're not asking for a big government bailout, frankly. They need access to credit so they can have their lines of credit. And they need orders. They need business. And that's spurred by consumer spending, basically, and people feeling confident about where they are and where they're going forward. I saw a survey a few weeks ago. 2/3 of Americans are holding back on their own spending right now, not because of the threat to the economy, but because of what they think they're going to end up paying more in taxes and costs because of new government regulations and programs. And you see that in Oregon with the passage of these two ballot measures. People are now I was talking to some cherry growers in the Dalles, some wheat growers out in the eastern part of our district that lost money last year, but because they're a C Corp, have to go borrow money because this tax increase is retroactive to pay taxes when they didn't make any money. What's happened in Oregon is not going to be good for our growth out of this hole we're in.
Let's talk about jobs. What can happen in Washington, D.C. to help promote or encourage the promotion of jobs? And kind of a caveat to that question is more massive bailouts probably aren't the answer. Would you agree with that?
Probably aren't the answer. Clearly aren't the answer. The so-called stimulus bill has started out $787 billion over 10 years. It's now $862, and with interest, it's $1.18 trillion. This is enormous. And you look at where some of this money is going. I saw a report the other day. They're spending about $400,000 to hire 100 individuals, pay them $45 a day for 3 weeks to go drink malt liquor and smoke marijuana so they can see the effects. Now, come on. A, that's not jobs. B, I thought we had programs on college campuses trying to discourage that. Anyway, if you were voting on this, is this how you'd vote, to go borrow money from your kids and grandkids, in effect, to spend on something like that at this time or any time? There's just one thing after another where this money's been wasted. So what do you do? I think there are things you could do, for example, on the cost to employers currently on unemployment. It's very high. The federal government could assume some of that cost for a year or so, free up money inside small companies so that they could continue to pay their employees. And there are other things you could do on accelerated depreciation. Businesses wear out their equipment. If we could provide incentives that make it more affordable for them to go buy new equipment, somebody's making that equipment, somebody's installing that equipment. These are positive things then that have productivity enhancements going forward. It's been done before in economic downturns. The data show it works to help get the economy going again and leave more money in the pockets of consumers, because 2/3 of our economy is driven by consumer spending. I think there are things that could be done that would be far more effective than this enormous spending spree that's going on.
Oregon Congressman Greg Walden. You can hear our entire interview with Walden by going to the podcast at KBND.com. I'm Dave Adams. Take 5 is a production of 1110 KBND Radio News. Depend on us.